Today, we will be looking at more incredible KeyForge artwork along with some of the lore and behind the scenes that go along with it. But be sure to stick around to the very end of the video where I'll be sharing a very important channel update. Enjoy! Let's start out by taking a look at some hidden or easily missed things in the actual art itself. If you take a look in the background of Ixili Fixfinger, it looks like there are a couple tunks chilling in the back, perhaps waiting to be used for the next invasion or battle. And given how beefy tunks are to begin with, I wouldn't be surprised if Fixfinger was working on them, giving them a little extra armor. Cornicin Octavia, a saurian creature first seen in Mass Mutation, is blowing into a giant horn, hence the name and the pretty hilarious flavor text. It turns out the horn Octavia is using is actually the Siren Horn, a saurian upgrade that appears in the same set. It's cool to see these two connected like that, and the fact that you can equip a Siren Horn to Cornicin Octavia is pretty neat as well. The Shadow Council, the house leader for shadows, contains a number of individuals, but one of the most prominent of them seems to be Old Bruno, located near the center of the council. He's the same shape and size and is still holding up his handful of cash like in his original artwork. It's very interesting to see him as a leading member of the Shadow Council, meaning he must have a pretty sizable range of influence within the Shadow's house. The infamous card Martian Generosity has a few neat details in it to explore. The setting for the card seems to be a shop of some kind, and on the counter by the shopkeeper there's a small figurine of a Sanctum Knight, perhaps up for sale. On a shelf in the background, there are a few products in the shape of the Shadow's house symbol, and we see these being worn by a number of actual Shadow's creatures like Bad Penny on her elbows, Gaspipes Malone and Knuckles Bolton on their shoulders, Subtle Otto on his chest, Nexus as knee pads, and Urchin just about everywhere on his outfit. It's cool to see these little things getting sold to patrons around the Crucible, though the Martian in this picture doesn't seem to be too happy about it. Rocket Boots is a neat Logos upgrade from Coda and AOA, but what's interesting about it in this case is that we only see about half of its full artwork. Remove the card template and we get to see an entire character wearing the Rocket Boots. Whoever this is looks like someone belonging to Logos, since she has other cybernetic enhancements besides the boots, but either way she looks like a really neat character and would have been cool to see with a card of her own. Since the upgrade is ultimately about the boots, it makes sense for the rest of her to be cut off, but the fact that there's so much more to the picture behind the template is super cool. Commander Chan is a super useful creature from Star Alliance that may appear on another card as well, that card being Zap. If you look closely, they both look very similar, with the same outfit, the same streak of gray hair just above the ear, and the same set of tools, including matching arm screens, a miniature satellite dish attached to the hip, and a cable stretching from the mini satellite dish to his arm. Agent Who-Man appears to be in a very Star Alliance-like setting, with similar colors and characters, even though he appeared in a set before Worlds Collide. And it would make for some interesting flavor to see a couple of Mars creatures trying to infiltrate the Star Alliance in a sort of stealth mission, since they're trying to assume a human-like disguise to blend in. And there's also Orb of Invidious, which appears all over the place on other discards. It's in the foreground of the image of Lord Invidious himself, which makes sense, since it's his orb, and on a number of the 7 sins in various locations. Both Pride and Sloth possess a staff with the Orb of Invidious on top, Greed is wearing it around his neck, and it looks like Envy may have one attached to the base of its tail. Alright, now let's get into some concept art. This section is really cool because there are tons of drafts and behind the scenes things that go into making this incredible card art, and even into designing the houses themselves. Looking at some concepts for House Untamed, we see a few familiar faces show up, such as Chota Hazri and Hunting Witch. In some very rough drafts, we see all sorts of neat designs for various creatures and monsters: fish, birds, bears, lizards. A common theme is the red highlights, which we do see in official cards as well, like the iconic red spines of Emberspine Mongrel, or Hunting Witch, or Snufflegator. One concept sheet presents the idea that these highlights or growths are caused by exposure to Ember, which is interesting. Other possibilities include ingestion of Ember, resulting in builds-up of it showing up across the body, or it being used as something fashionable to enhance one's appearance. There are a couple sheets that also show designs for the humans that show up throughout Untamed as well. Untamed is known for exhibiting an intimate relationship between humans and nature, and we can see this was meant to be their persona from the very beginning. We see people forming deep connections with the wild creatures of the Crucible, befriending them, working with them, almost to the point of becoming them. It's also cool to see the rough designs of some creatures we know quite well, such as Halakor in all its freakishness, and Murmuk facing down some armed individual. Turning to Dis is where things get real creepy. We see demons with multiple mouths, creatures that spit blood, and creatures that look kinda like Pit Lord wielding massive blades. There's even concept art for a Dis writing system, which we don't get to see much of besides on cards like Dominator Bauble. It also looks like there's a draft of the creature Drumble, and possibly the creature Picaroon is sitting on, or at least a similar one. But all around, there's such an essence of the nastiness portrayed in these rough disc designs. Everything is warped and deformed, covered in tendrils and chains, and you can barely tell up from down with half of them. The final cards did a fantastic job of capturing their ugly nature. There's no question that this is the darkest house in the game, and this concept art just solidifies that identity even more. Moving into logos, we get to see some really neat designs. First off, we have what appears to be the character in Bouncing Death Quirk here on the right, and over on the left, Valen Analyst, doing exactly what his name suggests in analyzing a piece of ember. But the concept art for logos is outstanding, with these wild robotic creatures and humans covered in enhanced cybernetic limbs and cyborg appendages. Being the scientific house, we see tons of crazy technological advances brought to the light, with entire organs and skeletal structures composed of this machinery, sentient robotic individuals built from metal and this blue sinewy material, which is a highlight of much of Logos' visual identity. There are even these monster-looking things that apparently didn't make it into the final game. It would have been awesome to see these guys have their own cards, as these dangerous Logos contraptions gone haywire or something. Overall, House Logos just has such a unique aesthetic, and I love all of it. Then there's Brobnar, which is just that, straight up Brobnar. Tons of giant, beefy creatures loaded up with nothing but muscle, brute force, and intimidation, with a few cybernetic adjustments on the side. The concept art is pretty simple, showing designs for various giants and ogres, along with some of the tribal paint and facial hair to go along with them. I love this guy with the mechanical beard that blasts out fire. Kinda reminds me of Lomir Flamefist, who has a similar thing going on. We also get to see designs for some of their weapons and armor, huge axes and these terrifying spiked helmets. I feel like it's rare that we see a Brobnar creature without some sort of metallic addition. Moving into Mars, this is where we first get to see the divide between the Martian elders and the Martian soldiers develop, with the soldiers being smaller and more numerous, and the elders being taller, lankier, and more sinister overall. This one over here is specified to have a blind eye, so I'm guessing he became Yaxili Marauder, who has a blind eye. There are also rough designs for their weapons, some of which possibly shoot psychic brain juice, and their facial features overall, and I love just how classic alien they all look. They've got their UFOs and machinery. It just all screams Martian, and I can't wait to see what wild new contraptions and things they have when they return in Winds of Exchange. Then Sanctum is pretty much just what you'd expect. These heavily armored knights with broadswords and cool weapons and helmets. However, these knights are mostly spirits, powerful beings that can only be contained by their suits of armor. One of their defining features, however, are the massive rays of light that show up behind them or around their heads, confirmed to be, quote, spiritual projections of the believer's will, made possible by the use of the sacred ember. And apparently, part of what makes these wings show up is this wing projector that helps emit the golden aura into these cool designs. House Sanctum is my favorite house, and part of it is because of their mighty, fierce appearances that are so well represented in this concept art. House Shadows has some neat concept art as well, and we get to see all sorts of neat rough drafts for their various sneaky weapons and tools, and their iconic cloaks and hoods. These guys possess such a cool mix of sci-fi and fantasy, with crossbows and knives as their weapons of choice, and cybernetic fairies at their command. They also have a number of small, rodent-like creatures on their side, like these enhanced ferrets and moles. We see these in cards like Fidget and Plague Rat, and it's interesting to see these sort of creatures as part of Shadow's identity from the very beginning. So now that we've seen some concept art looking at the houses as a whole, let's take a look at some more specific concept art for individual cards. It looks like there are a couple different poses considered for 1-2 punch, with the final design landing on something a little more dynamic. Johnny Longfingers went through a similar process, and you never notice just how long his fingers are until you really look at them. Look What I Found from House Untamed has a number of variations, as does Molfin, also from House Untamed. Squire Alice had a lot of different drafts, but she always seems to be holding the same box. The concept art seems to suggest that whatever is in the box is something dangerous or important, but the final card doesn't do so quite as much. Trust No One originally had some large mushrooms in the background, as opposed to the tree that's seen in the final card, and Witch of the Eye had a couple pose adjustments as well. Word of Returning has a number of pose drafts also, and all of them look super cool. The art for that card is just incredible looking no matter what form it's in. Smith, in addition to some pose differences, was apparently at one point going to be called Blacksmith, but was shortened. Niffleape went through some pretty drastic changes because it looks like it had wings at one point in its development. Now that would have been crazy, to have a winged Niffleape. There's tons more concept art to look at, but I don't want to ruin the experience by talking over all of it. Take a look yourself. Now, before I end off the video, there's one last thing I want to mention that appears to be something of a spoiler for the upcoming set, Winds of Exchange. Artwork was found of this cute little Starlines creature that we've never seen before. However, taking a look at the concept art for this creature, we see that his card type is that of a token. The only mention we've seen of a token thus far is in the official Winds of Exchange spoiler, Borka Rick, a brand new Mars creature with text that reads, "Each time a Mars card is discarded from your hand, make a token creature." So clearly, this unknown Starlines creature has something to do with his token mechanic, possibly being a token creature himself. But that's all for today. However, before you go, don't click away just yet. There is an important channel update that I would like to share with you guys. As of the uploading of this video, I have launched a Patreon page for this Aembermedes YouTube channel. The support this channel has received already right here on YouTube has been amazing and means so much to me. It's all because of you guys that I've been able to put out this content, and this incredible community has kept me inspired to keep moving forward with these videos. So thank you all so much. But if any of you feel at all inclined whatsoever to support the channel on an even bigger level, the Aembermedes Patreon page is available for that. I currently have 5 tiers set up with various benefits and rewards. From getting to play best of 5 KeyForge sets against me each month, however interesting that is to anybody, to unlocking Patreon exclusive videos and posts, there is certainly an option here for you. Higher tiers even give you some control over my content, hooking me up with decks to analyze and suggesting video topics that will end up here on this channel. There are monthly deck giveaways and a number of other things. This Patreon is something I hope to keep updating and building on as time goes on, so be sure to take a look if you're interested. I'll be sure to link it in the description below and elsewhere in my channel. But if you don't want to support this way, that's totally fine as well. Either way, I'll keep putting out content for you to enjoy. So once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.